So I'm here with Zack Giffin, the co-host of Tiny House Nation. What's up? Thanks for joining us here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're here at the Real Estate Wealth Expo. My name is Michael Meyer, and I'm here, and I want to bring your knowledge to the people that are watching. So I have a question for you.
Gotcha.
So you deal with tiny homes, right?
That's basically eat, sleep, and breathe it. Definitely.
Yeah. So I'm going to get a little personal here. So I live in Manhattan, and till not long ago, me and my wife, we bought this apartment, and it was a small apartment. And then we had a kid, and we got a dog, and a lot of us were living in what people would say was a really small space.
Yes.
And I happened to, there was things that I loved about this small space, but the feelings that I had about not wasting and all this kind of stuff, I started watching your show, and I was like, it spoke to me, right?
Yeah.
And so first of all, I want to thank you for that, because it was touching for me personally.
I think a lot of people in big cities, especially New York City, feel like they've been living in tiny houses for a long time.
Right.
They're like, hey, there's nothing new about this. Like, you should see my apartment. It's 300 square feet. And exactly. And the one thing that I would say in terms of your process is that I definitely encourage everyone to think about what's appropriate in terms of their need for space at that time in their life. And you just described a perfect example of how your need for space changes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if I'm a young man as a bachelor, my need for space is totally different than even being in a relationship as a couple, and then you throw children's or animals or you know, everything else that life has, and your need for space is more, and it's totally okay.
Right.
Right.
So that leads me to a question. So it's okay to have different needs for spaces. Now, let's say somebody has a need for a tiny home, or they want a tiny home. They don't need a huge home, right? You know, nowadays I hear a lot of people saying, I would love to live in a home like that, but like, where would I put a tiny home?
I mean, well, what you've just done is kind of stumble upon the 800 gorilla in the room, 800-pound gorilla, right?
You did help me stumble upon it.
Yeah, I stumbled right there into it. But no, what I'm talking about is that is the big golden question about tiny homes. It's okay, there's a big interest in them. They're sold on the concept, but okay, in practice, how does this actually work? Like, where do we put these? Where are they tolerated? And the reality is that typically in this country, we have two things that are kind of working against tiny houses. One is building codes, and the second is zoning codes. So the zoning code is something that changes every place that you're at, right? Each city has its own policy. The building codes are done on a much more universal basis. And the one thing that I would say that people should be very, very aware of is that we have actually successfully gotten the IRCC, which is the International Residential Code, the body that actually dictates what building codes are, to include an appendix specifically designed for tiny homes. So they're the very first time in history, starting...
When did this happen?
This was in February of this year.
Oh, wow.
And it won't be implemented until 2018. But just so people are completely aware, there is absolutely a legal pathway for tiny homes to be constructed now. And it's the type of thing that different municipalities have to adopt it. They adopt it at different times. Guess what? The entire state of Idaho already adopted it. It hasn't even made it into the appendix.
Since February?
Yes.
Wow.
So you're having cities that are looking forward to this this change in policy to the point where they're adopting it before it's even actually made it into the books.
Wow.
And that is just a demonstration based upon the desirability and the amount of pressure that building officials and zoning officials are facing from people that want to go through with this style of life, right? And so the building code's one thing, zoning policy is a little different, right? So zoning policy is not dictating what the structure needs to be safe. What kind of structures do we want within our communities, right?
Gotcha.
And there is just a whole lot of different ways that municipalities are trying to incorporate tiny homes. And the number one way is that they're actually looking at increasing the availability for property owners to build accessory dwelling units.
Wow.
So you know an accessory dwelling unit, right? So it's basically something that we've had for a long time. It's a mother-in-law apartment, or it's a backyard cottage. It's a tiny house in essence. And they're looking at that for all sorts of good reasons. I think the whole state of California just basically made it okay in single-family residence anywhere in the state to build an ADU.
And then when they build that, can someone else as unrelated to the family move into that home? Can they rent that home out?
Absolutely. It can be unrelated to the family. You know, and so there's You know, there's definitely proponents of this kind of policy like myself, and then there's also critics, and I think that there's valid concerns on every level. And as somebody coming to the Real Estate Wealth Expo to talk about tiny homes, what I really want to do is try to educate people that are here to just be aware of what is happening within the tiny house landscape, so that they can not be surprised, as well as maybe incorporate utilizing tiny homes into their business model. And I really do believe the way things are going, with cities all across the country opening up their zoning policy for tiny homes, with the building code officials actually endorsing it and writing it into the code, what we're talking about is a movement that's it's right in the process of transferring from being kind of a fringe populist kind of thing to an actual viable piece of our housing market.
What's really cool to me about it is a couple things. First of all, it's cool to see changes made by the people, like ground up, you know? Like, It's not something that officials are like, oh, we should create this new tiny home and rezone it and go through all this stuff. It's that people have a demand for it, and now their voices are being heard.
Yep.
And in no tiny part, no pun intended, thanks to you for getting out there and showing people what the life is like, and that a tiny home could be a gorgeous home. It could be an improvement in your lifestyle. Yes. It could give you affordability that you didn't have otherwise. And for me, it's just cool to like see someone who, you know, you have the star power, people know who you are, and you're using it. You're sitting here not talking to me about hoorah, tiny house nation. You're talking about really solid, important things that are about what you're doing. And I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I find it really difficult to have short conversations about tiny homes, because when you say, okay, come talk to me about tiny house, it's like, well, what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about the state of our housing? You want to talk about the state of the economy, the state of the environment, the motivations that are leading people to desire to live in actually closer proximity with families? All of these factors are really big topics, so it's hard to like squeeze that conversation into 30 minutes, but.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. You definitely shared a lot. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to see the presentation that you gave today, it was phenomenal. We have a lot of it on the Real Estate Wealth Expo page, or you can follow me at Michael Meyer NYC, and I tried to share a bunch of stuff over there. So really, really great content. You really shared some great stuff. And I just want to say thank you, man. This is really a pleasure.
Michael, thank you. And honestly, in the 15 minutes that we got to chat about it, I've already been taking notes on what this guy's doing on social media. And if you follow me, I'm hoping that it's going to be greatly improved now.
Yes, awesome. My pleasure. All right, take care, guys. This is Michael Meyer NYC. Zach, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.